Now for a movie rant break, One Up presents a movie rant break. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the movie rant break. Got an amazing episode today. Got John Smith in the building.
Hey, you already know what the fuck going on. It's John Smith.
Today, we are reviewing Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, the Fellowship of the Ring. Yes.
The Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
Thank you for the correction.
No problem.
Big episode, great film. Obviously, a lot of people love it. Well deserved. First off, just wanted to say, give a shout out rather to J.R.R. Tolkien,
Legend himself.
Very awesome writer. Made a great piece of literature. Many pieces of literature. 4 total in this arc between The Hobbit and then the 3 of the Lord of the Rings. So he originally wrote it back in 1937 and allegedly finished in 1949. So I just wanted to give him his 2 cents, if you will, because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, and he's brought so much joy to people for writing these awesome stories. And this review is going to be including the extended cut. We did watch the extended cut, which I did enjoy. My take on it was just it developed characters further and just enriches the story a little more. I know a lot of people were kind of, it's too much. It's long, but I didn't feel that it was disruptively longer. I thought everything that was added just made, like I said, the story more enriched. Like you get to see Galadriel give everyone gifts, which I thought it was the best addition to the extended cut.
Which you see a lot of them use those gifts later on too, which is cool.
You see Aragorn stab the leader in the leg with the knife that Galadriel gave him,
right?
Which just had it hit harder, you know. And then it was awesome to see Gimli ask for a piece of hair, and she gives him 3 because she's the most fair. Bars. So that was really dope. And yeah, this film was released back in December 19th, 2001. I think the extended cut came.
It's my birthday.
It's not.
September 19th.
December.
Oh, I thought you said September.
No, my bad. December 19th, 2001. Right. And I think the extended cut came out a year after the initial release. Let me get into who was a part of this film.
Well, first, I do believe that the theatrical cut is an easier watch. I think it flows a little bit better. There's some parts of the extended cut that like kind of are jarring, especially when I'm so used to watching the theatrical. I mean, like, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. That's why I'm fucking here. I've been obsessed with Lord of the Rings since it came out. I think that there's so many integral pieces of my life that have been changed based off of this movie, which is really cool. And I always watch the theatrical cut if I just throw it on. Like, I never like throw on the extended, which some people who are actual Lord of the Rings nerds like I am would probably criticize me for that. But I just think it's an easier watch. I think it's just more fluid and more flow. But I do think the extended cut has a lot of cool stuff, a lot more building on character, and probably a lot more details that interconnect with the book and whatnot. So,
and I also think I thought it kept on pace, and it's around 30 minutes extra plus extra with credits from the original, which is about 3 hours. So the extended cut's another 30 something minutes. In the Fellowship, I know the other films they're even longer. Like, I think Return of the King is 5 hours. The extended cut.
Yeah, I don't think it's that long, but it's definitely.
I'm gonna look it up.
Definitely pushing it.
I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, I mean the greatest thing about me being able to do this podcast is I've wanted to do this podcast for a while now. Like, I've been you guys who have heard me before. I've been here hella times, and I've talked about doing this podcast since the forefront of this podcast's existence. We even talked about doing like a Harry Potter versus Lord of the Rings at one point. Right. Like, yeah, that had come up.
Return of the King, 251 minutes.
251 minutes. So was that 6:12?
It's over 4 hours.
Yeah, over 4 hours. Yeah,
and that's not including the credits. I'm pretty sure because they have 208 minutes, or maybe that is the credits because 208 minutes for the Fellowship extended. The Two Towers is 223, and Return of the King is 251 minutes. So
super long.
They're super long. So I was right. It's 4 hours. Bitch.
You said 5, but yeah.
Did I say 5?
Yeah, that's why I was like, it's not
Maybe,
5. But it's pushing it.
well, maybe because I saw the credits and it was like 4 hours and 45 minutes with the credits.
Right,
So maybe these are the run times of actual screen time.
Yeah. No, it's
Nonetheless,
intense. It's intense.
There's more content in the extended cuts in the other films.
For
is
sure.
what I was trying to make a
For
point
sure.
to. Yeah. So is that all you wanted?
Yeah. I just want to add that.
Okay.
We can go into the names of people.
So obviously, shout out to Peter Jackson. Dude's a G.
Absolute G. Taking on this project, that's just an intense, immense project to take on. So
Yeah, I think it was years. They dropped them each year after year.
Well, they filmed them all together.
Yeah.
So they filmed them all at once. It was the longest at the time. Was the longest time for shooting in congruence in the history of film. It was like 275 days or something of total shooting time.
And they started in the 90s. Like I was reading that in 1999 they started building the Hobbit holes in New Zealand.
Yep, they built those before.
And
they wanted to make them look lived in, and they wanted
which people did. I looked up because I was thinking about it would be a cool place to visit. New Zealand looks beautiful.
Of course, New Zealand is absolutely gorgeous, and you see a lot of that in this film as well as the Two Towers. And
like when they're hiking through the areas,
reckless,
it's very cool, and it just looks the Shire specifically looks like such a nice place, and
beautiful.
I would want to go see Hobbiton and Bag's End, which was, from what I read, it's in North Island in New Zealand, and they actually built the Hobbit holes. 39 temporary Hobbit holes, and the New Zealand Army lived in them, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and now they're permanent. So that when they went back to do the Hobbit, they left them. So now you can go back and see them.
I don't know if they kept a couple like Bilbo's or whatever, but from what I read on this source, it said that like they took a lot down. I'm assuming they keep 39. I'm sure
when they rebuilt it in the Hobbit, now they left them. So now you can go and see the whole town.
Okay, that's what. Okay, maybe that's why I thought I could go visit.
You can, yeah. They took them down initially, and then they put them back up for the Hobbit filming.
It would definitely be cool to go see.
Super cool, dude. There's a bunch of like you can go see all the landmarks. You can go on a trip and see all the landmarks. And actually, my sister did that because she spent a lot of time in New Zealand, so she went and saw a lot of the landmarks that were shot in.
That would be cool.
Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it'd be a sweet trip. They have it because this film brought in This film alone brought in like $200 million of revenue for the New Zealand New Zealand government or like New Zealand's infrastructure or
because they
economy. I guess
a lot of times when companies are going in and filming certain areas, part of the shtick is that they have to employ people from that area.
Yeah, correct.
So, which I think is good. Like
$200 million for an economy of an island is like really intense. That's
I
a
would be
lot.
surprised it was more, like especially.
I think that was just for this movie.
Oh, that would make more sense if it was like just this film because
200 million.
Yeah, the budget was 93 million, which is kind of low-ish. I mean, it's 01. I mean, we're not including inflation, but at the box office, 897.7 million.
Insane.
So before continuing on, shout out to director Peter Jackson, screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson. Obviously, this was based off Tolkien's Gem.
Yeah.
The film was starring Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Liv Tyler, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Cate Blanchett, John Rhys Davies, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, Orlando Bloom, Christopher Lee, Hugo.
Sir Christopher Lee.
Sorry. R.I.P. No.
R.I.P. Yeah.
Hugo Weaving, Sean Bean, Ian Holm, and Andy Serkis. Cinematography by Andrew Lesney. Edited by John Gilbert. Music by Howard Shore, which Howard Shore did a great job with the score. It's such iconic music.
So iconic.
The runtime of this was 178 minutes, but with the extended cut was like an extra 30 or so. And the extended cut credits are extremely longer too, which I thought was interesting. Like it lengthens a lot.
Yeah.
So
a lot more actors too. I'm sure because you think about how many scenes, like even that scene when they're leaving Rivendell, there's like tons of elves in that scene, and that wasn't in the original cut.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to give the brief breakdown of this film?
I can give a brief breakdown. Yeah. So there's a ring of power, pretty much controls all evil in the world, and it lands in the hands of this unexpected hobbit, and his job ends up being to go on a journey to destroy this in the place it was created, which is the fires of Mount Doom. And the story kind of evolves around that and brings a group of people together to help the Fellowship to make that thing happen.
And the Fellowship is a really dope squad.
So far.
Even as much as I don't care for Merry and Pippin, it's a really gangster squad. Yeah. It's so diverse of a team.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really gangster.
It's super gangster. If we go to the beginning of the film, because I'm going to try to go sequential as much as we can. Like, we're going to try. But I just want to start with the opening montage with the ring giving and just the framing of it. And they're talking, was it 7 or 9 rings to the humans? 9. And just the way they frame it, they're in like a triangular shape.
They all like pull it up at the same time.
Yeah, like it was super synthetic, but it was really cool. And how they just showed it. And the narrative is really good. And it just really gets you kind of excited, especially if you already have seen it. You're like, this is the origins. And
the narration was supposed to be Frodo at first.
I like it.
And then they were like, and then they went to Gandalf, but then they decided to go with Galadriel because they just felt that it like maximized the feeling of timelessness of the elves. Cause like an elf narrating a story makes a lot more sense. This is over the course of thousands of years. So it was just really, really cool. I think Galadriel did a great job at that narration.
She's dope.
And just kind of getting the lore in a kind of forced manner sometimes can backfire in movies, right? Like sometimes that exposition dump at the beginning of a movie can sometimes be like overwhelming or just feel played out. But this one is it feels so immersive. And I think that's the one thing about this movie that I really wanted to touch on in this recent rewatch, plus the fact that I've seen it, but watching it in the essence of having to do a podcast to it, right?
Finally, right?
It's just a little bit different where you kind of take a deeper dive into everything. I mean, I damn near know every line in this fucking movie. I can say it out loud, which I did multiple times while we were watching it.
Though you're like, I may be quoting this entire film.
I did it quietly every time. That's why.
Well, because it's like, just do it quietly. You were good. I only heard you like 5 to 7 times.
Yeah, but I think the acting never breaks. There's not a second where you're not immersed in this world with these characters. You never once are like, oh, like that made me feel like I was watching the actor say something.
Yeah.
Never. It's so impressive.
You're in Middle Earth.
For real.
That's why I think it would be cool to visit. Like, because it would feel that we were in Middle Earth to some degree.
Yeah.
New Zealand obviously is a beautiful place, but
the acting's just next level. I don't think there's another like experience in cinema
Potter for me
that has the congruency when it comes to acting all around. Like there's not a single weak link.
See, that's why like some of my favorite films, like Potter, I find that to be that way. I think Lord of the Rings is like that. I think Alice, the 2 films, is like that for me. And Wizard of Oz is like that for me. And I like to say Tron Legacy. There is a part or two in Tron Legacy
100%.
that is a little like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
But overall, it's very, like, the people part of that production are phenomenal. But yeah, I agree. And that's why I want to do a quick shout out to Tolkien and the people that made this film possible, because it was fucking super well done.
Facts. Yes, absolute facts. For sure. Here.
I didn't know if you wanted to.
I know, I'm good. I'm good. I got to drop. You already know what the fuck going on.
Still maintaining in the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
I love the elves' fighting tactics where they uppercut people, the charging orcs and goblins. Love that.
Amilo hide! Husband feeling! Amilo hide! That's just so fire, dude.
And then when they are doing that narrative, montage, monologue, whatever, the improbableness of Middle Earth defeating Sauron and the finger cut off with the broken sword, it almost, because the improbableness, it almost makes it more believable. Because it was improbable they could ever be Sauron, and because I think Sauron slipped up and got his fingers cut off with the ring on it. It was like, how else would
he got cocky? He went down to reach down to probably grab him to like make a
spectacle.
Yeah, and he got sloppy.
And then it segues into the ring being the bottom of a lake for 2,500 years, which I thought was just such a cool notion too. And then it's like, it drops you in, you're like, oh shit, we're in this stuff. Like, you're so caught up
right
on what's happening. And what makes this film, I think one of the better ones. I think Two Towers I like better, but it's only because this one's so good. And yeah, it is slow in the beginning, but it's because they're setting up a super fire trilogy.
Oh, of course, dude. Yeah, and it takes your time with characters, gets you to know everybody like you know them as a friend, and that makes a huge difference when it comes to your investment in what happens to them, obviously. But yeah, I mean, the coolest thing about this movie, especially for the time, Peter Jackson actually spent his own money on getting the software finalized that could help them have a CGI battle at that scale. And the reason is because before this movie, there was never a CGI capable of making a massive war happen with each individual piece of that puzzle acting independently. And so that's why when you watch these huge, grand shots of like these massive, groups of individuals clashing into each other, it looks so real because the software you could even push in and go into the eyes of one of those creatures and individually see what they're doing with that software. Like it's that in depth where it's not just like copy and paste of like a group of 5 things. It's literally each individual piece of that puzzle is interacting independently based off of what they're running into. So you're seeing these huge scale battles and you're like, for the time period, nothing ever like it. It was mind blowing. And that's, I think, what's really funny about watching this movie now after we've gotten Marvel, after we've gotten Game of Thrones, after we've gotten some of these other major scale movies, right?
Even Potter uses like a battle scene,
right?
Like that at the end.
Yeah. So like going back and watching this and seeing how almost flawless it was for the time period.
For the time,
it was so revolutionary. There was nothing that was like this at the time. Like it just changed cinema in so many ways.
Yeah, and on the change in cinema, I think you talk about the software they use for the battles, and I also forgot to mention the makeup artist is phenomenal, and the costume designers. The makeup artist was Rick Finlater. Sorry for that. Costume designer was Ingela Beryl Dixon, who's from New Zealand. I think she was probably hired on for that. Just everything looks so great, and we talk about the impact and how this kind of changed how things were done in cinema, like Andy Serkis playing Gollum and the CGI for that and how it was executed was so awesome. They use that technology in like every fucking film now. And if it wasn't for Andy Serkis being able to be so like he's just like very, I want to say, like animated, and because it takes a sort of like humility to like immerse yourself in something like the character Gollum and make it believable. And when it hasn't been done before, like he really was cutting edge doing that. And now it's common. Like that's how they do
motion capture stuff. Yeah. We got not a lot of that in this film. Like there was not a lot of Gollum, right? It was very, very minimal. Like obviously the Two Towers, you get a lot more of what Andy Serkis' performance, but even the subtle small pieces of his performance in this were just so impressive. When he's in the cave at first, right at the beginning, and he loses the ring, even the way he looks up when he has the ring in his hand and he hears a sound or whatever, like it's just really, really well done. But I wanted to touch base on the makeup artist, Sir Ian McKellen, right? Who is a knight, just so far. What a fucking G. He was the first casted person for this movie. And the reason is because he's been a huge Tolkien fan forever. Like he religiously reads all the Lord of the Rings books every year. And he had always never not done it. So they actually used him with the makeup. He would come in and have like some of the final says on whether it looks accurate to what was described in the books. So like especially with the orcs and stuff, like he'd be like, no, like this needs to change or the ears aren't right or whatever the case is. It was like him, which is so gangster.
Ian McKellen is the reason even the Hobbit films are what they are. And he's 100%. My favorite character. All the characters are awesome, all very unique, and just kudos to them. Kudos to Tolkien for creating them. And yeah, Gandalf has the best lines to me. His presence is awesome. Ian McKellen murked it, and hearing that is like
it makes so much sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's so satisfying. And his line where he talks about a wizard is never late. and they show up when they need to. It's such a fucking phenomenal line.
That's literally you. You're a wizard.
I'm a wizard, so I'm like, and I'm totally like that. I'm like, we show up when we want to. It's facts. And it's my
We show up precisely when he means to.
yeah, which is facts. That's probably my favorite line. And the second line is one does not simply just walk into Mordor.
Of course.
Shout out to the OG meme. Yeah. One does not simply sleep without a fan. Like, love that. Yeah. The what is your favorite character?
And so for a very long time it was Gimli.
I love Gimli too.
I just think Gimli's so like he's talk about immersive. That actor himself was so immersed in the character at certain times, like people on set didn't even know whether he was like gonna be able to break his character. Like he was really immersed, like overly immersed. And there was also like an allergic reaction he was having to the prosthetics he was wearing. And so like some people even say that it was making him go a little crazy and like be too convinced that he was the character Gimli. That's like a rumor I've heard, which is interesting. But I always like Gimli because I think he's fucking hilarious. But I think as I've gotten older, it's just hands down Legolas. Hands down.
Yeah, Legolas is too nice with a bow.
Oh, he's disgusting.
He makes Katniss everything look like a soft bitch.
Yeah.
Like Legolas is so on point.
He's so on point, dude. And like there's so many parts where it just shows how different elves are from everybody else. Like when everybody else is trudging through the snow and the mountain, like he's just like, walking on top of it. Like you're like, word.
I fuck with it.
It's so G.
Orlando Bloom is so intense.
Yeah, he didn't even finish drama school before he got casted for this. Like my man was still in school. Yeah, he killed that shit though.
He was so intense. Like every time he speaks, you're like, what does he say? Like tell me more. Okay, so on the Lego stock. Okay, ready? You ready? This is a fucking breaking question. No pun intended. All right, fuck, kill, marry. Galadriel, Arwen, or Legolas? Like, fuck, kill, marry. Go.
Galadriel,
Arwen,
Legolas.
Fuck, kill, marry. Go.
Ooh, got it. I would fuck Arwen. I would kill Galadriel and marry Legolas.
Swag.
Turn the fuck up.
Turn the fuck up. I mean, he's the beautifulest bitch in the movie.
I even made a joke when we were watching it. I was like, when Gimli got the 3 hairs from Galadriel, and he was talking to Legolas about it. I was like, dude, he could have just asked Legolas for his 3 hairs. Like,
right? Facts.
Oh, shit.
That's just classic. Okay. So rewinding back to the film, I'm gonna try to stay in the middle of the film. We keep.
Yep.
So I thought Bilbo, right? Let's talk Bilbo real quick. He's awesome.
Fantastic.
But I just wanted to speak on the dynamic of the character dynamic itself, being that the Hobbit story happens and Bilbo's a part of that, but then just to like, as a living thing, kind of decide when you go out and like give your last speech, you choose the night of your, air quote, death and departure. I just thought we all kind of would want that, and Bilbo gets to like have the most exciting life. He writes a book about it, and then chooses his night of death, and then gets to like go live in like purgatory, so to speak, in Rivendell, and then like die out.
Super dope.
It's a cool dynamic.
I think the coolest thing about this movie that I think at face value, a lot of people who will watch this movie don't really understand, and I think that it helps you understand what Frodo's struggles are like after you get a grasp of how much power the ring holds over an individual. And watching Bilbo go through that struggle of giving up the ring, even though it's a short scene, just seeing him decide that he wants to keep it in the midst of him always thinking that he can just let go of it, I think it stands a lot towards the feeling people have towards addiction, right? It's almost like a lot of people, when they're addicted to something, they think, oh, I could stop doing this whenever. And that's how Bilbo's mindset was. Is like, I don't need the ring. I could let go of it. It's on the counter over there. Like, I don't need it. But then watching him go through the struggle of like actually having to decide himself that has to let go of it. Gandalf didn't force him. Gandalf made him make a choice. But
see, I had a take on that where I felt like Gandalf was putting a lot onto Frodo. Like he left the ring there. Frodo stumbles upon it.
Well, I wasn't talking about Frodo. I was talking about Bilbo.
Oh, Bilbo.
I was talking about Bilbo giving up the ring and that struggle he was going through, and how it correlates with addiction in a lot of ways.
I was saying I thought you were saying, adding to what you said with that was that when Frodo takes the ring.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm saying that he put that moment on to Frodo.
Yeah.
He's like, don't let me touch it. No, that's
well,
your
he
shit.
couldn't, and he knows he couldn't, because if Gandalf takes that ring into his hand, he's one of the most powerful beings in the entire world, right? Like magical power, physical power.
The wizards were sent there by like
the gods,
right?
right? And so him being that powerful, Gandalf knows if he picks up that ring just one time, he will be engulfed by it, because power and power create like superpower, you know?
Like
and yeah, pretty much. But he would be a force of evil that would take down the whole world if he puts that ring in his hand, and he knows it. Okay. And all he'd have to do is touch it one time. That's why when he goes down, he almost touches it. You don't even see his hand touch it, and he sees the eye, right? And at that point in time, he's like, "Holy fuck! I knew Bilbo had a ring for a very long time, and I knew it was a magical ring, but like that's not just a magical ring. Like I don't know what the fuck that is."
Well, because that's why I thought was weird is that if he was so suspicious of the origin of what that was, why did he leave it and then like go on this month-long journey and then come back? You know,
he couldn't take it with him.
I know you were telling me that now,
right.
But it's just like watching him, like why he could have saved some. He could have brought it to Mount Doom and dealt with it in the time that he went all around researching.
And he knows he wouldn't have done it if he put it in his own hand and put it in his own like decision to go get rid of it. It would have turned very, very bad, and he knows that. So what he knows is how resilient hobbits are to the ring's power. One, because they're not powerful creatures at all, so it's very hard for the ring to kind of take them over and create this negative force with them. They're like the least powerful creatures on the planet, right? Yeah. They're like little, harmless, can't do anything to hurt anybody. They're not going to get taken over and be like, I can use this ring for power. Yeah. So that's number one. But number two, their perspective on like the good and evil in the world is so far away. Like they're this creature who lives in this small little town, never has left. All they care about is what they're going to drink tonight, what they're going to eat tonight, and who they're going to hang out with. Like that's it. They don't have any perspective on the massive pull of good and evil in the world, and as opposed to someone who Gandalf, who knows firsthand, he's known it for thousands of years, right? So seeing that and knowing that and seeing how Bilbo handled the ring for that long, and seeing how even Smeagol handled the ring for as long as he did. Yeah, he got corrupted, but it was a very long time he had it. You know, he had the ring for like hundreds and hundreds of years, so he got, completely torn apart by it. But just seeing Bilbo have it for 60 years and extended his life, and he got a little attached to it, but he still was super resilient, right? He was like, the only way this is going to work is if I put this back into a hobbit's hand. He's like, they're the only ones who can handle it. If I put this in man's hand, they're going to get corrupted. If I put this in an elf's hand, it's going to turn into a fucking death across the world. If I put this into a dwarf's hand, they're going to get obsessed with it, like gold madness, right? Or like whatever. And then if I put it in my hand, everyone's going to fucking die, and I know that. So like and Gandalf being that strong to be able to go and do that, it's fucking awesome. Don't tempt me, Frodo.
That's great. That's great. It just, on the putting things on the Frodo thing, I feel like when he's in Mines of Moria, or when they're on the mountaintop, and he's like, we'll leave it up to the Hobbit. And I was like, why is he putting this on Frodo right now?
Because he can't make a decision like that. He's like, dude, if I fucking choose, bro, something's going to go wrong.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Were the Nazgul / ring race always in pursuit of the ring and couldn't find it until Bilbo put the ring on in his night that he disappears? Were they always looking, or were they like spawned?
No, they weren't spawned. They've always been around. They're just kind of been in like idle and probably just doing like little things for Sauron. Well, they've always kind of, I think, been doing deeds, right? But their number one goal is, first of all, they're slaves of Sauron because he's enslaved them by giving them the rings to begin with. Yeah, those 9 rings he gave to begin with. He pretty much enslaved them, right? Because he knows how easily corrupted men are. Like, men are the most easily corrupted creatures on the planet. So he gave them those rings knowing that he'd get slaves out of them. And once he got the slaves out of them, then pretty much they've always been his slaves, right? But their number one goal is to find the ring because they know that's what's going to bring back Sauron into his full strength. So yes, that has always been their goal.
Okay. the ring is so interesting because they always refer to it like it has a mind of its own. It's like a being of sorts.
It wants to get back to its master.
That's
Yeah, 100%. It makes its decisions. Like even when it talks about in the prologue, where it's talking about how it abandoned Isildur, or how it abandoned Gollum. Like it wasn't just lost. It made a choice. It was like time to move on from this. Right? And it's funny how that works because we don't really understand that, but the way it was created was with so much malice and so much, darkness that it's like, who fucking knows the evil that's inside of it?
Don't tempt me, Frodo.
Don't tempt me, Frodo.
Sir Ian McClellan's the G. They did a really good job in this film with making the size discrepancies what they were between hobbits, or if it was the Balrog or whatever.
Force perspective, a lot of times.
It was super
Force
cool.
perspective is really cool, and it's really hard to notice. Even times where they move the camera, if you see the behind the scenes, they're moving the table at the same time of moving the camera in order to be able to keep the force perspective to make Frodo look small and Ian McClellan look big and whatnot. Like they had to move the table while they moved the camera to keep the same perspective of like 3 feet back for Frodo. It's wild, dude.
They didn't do that in The Hobbit. It was all CGI.
CGI,
Yeah. And the CGI I thought held up in this film mostly. There's always a couple parts. Even Gollum looked okay when you saw him, and it's 01. The Balrog looked fucking great.
Fucking phenomenal.
So
did
good.
the cave troll look really good.
Yeah, it's a little computer. Like I just thought the Balrog. I don't know if it's because the smoke they used was really good.
Yeah, it was really fire.
And I just think
even the squid creature, like I think all that. I think the only thing that doesn't hold up visually is some of the green screen. We talked a little bit about that when we were watching it. The green screen is a little iffy here and there, and like it's funny how they used it because they were shot on site a lot of times. I feel like they had to fill in some clips that they didn't get, and that's kind of what we talked about before, just to be able to use those green screen clips. But yeah, they looked a little bit iffy sometimes for sure.
Yeah, it was nothing crazy, just here and there, and just a little eyesore, but nothing major. Like the Wood Elves in the extended cut, I can see why they would take that out because they just looked out of place. Gandalf riding on the eagle was a little. The inside Mount Doom looked really fake when they doing the flashbacks.
Yeah, like the green screen there, yeah.
But overall, like really legit. And I think you've told me before years ago that, you talk about this new software they're using for the battles, but they also use like tons of real people, and like all the orc and the orc eye, real goblins are all real people.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference.
I even made a joke to you just last night. I was like, they just put out a casting call that was like, we need any bodybuilders or large men. We need to paint you black and have you run through the woods. So, like those dudes are all massive, like just like huge imposing forces. And like I've talked a lot about this when it comes to The Hobbit, right? And how they made the white orc and how it was full CGI. And I was just like, dude, the thing that made the Uruk-hai so crazy and scary were the fact that they were just like these actual large, freakishly big men that are like painted and fucking makeup and all these prosthetics, and you're just like, that is the scariest looking thing I've ever seen in my life. If I saw that in real life, I'd fucking run as fast as I could,
It does create a disconnect when you watch The Hobbit, like with those type of elements, where this you're like, well, these motherfuckers want to fuck shit up.
Seriously.
The wizard battle, Saruman and Gandalf.
Gandalf breakdancing.
Swag. And that's one of the coolest parts of the film, seeing wizards battle. I thought it was a cool wizard battle. Yeah. I just I wondered why, there was 5 wizards, if I'm not mistaken, that were sent from the gods or whatever to Middle Earth to protect against Sauron.
Sauron, yeah.
Sauron, is, they're really close in it.
I think they were there for more than that too, but yeah. They weren't just there to protect the world against Sauron. I think they were there for plenty of other reasons. But yes.
From what I've read, that's what it was like. I don't know the lore like 100%, but
from evil, I think in general, yeah.
Yeah, fair. And it would have been cool to see the other wizards, but I read that they didn't have the rights to the other 2, but I don't think the other, because Radagast is in The Hobbit. He does make a cameo in this, and I don't know if he does in the books, but it would be cool to see more of those wizards, because the wizards, I think, are the coolest.
Yeah, it was like, so you're probably going to see some more of that, and that's funny that you mentioned that, because part of the reason why this is so relevant right now is because they're making the Rings of Power, and they've made the first season. The first season came out of Rings of Power, which to be 100% honest, I haven't finished, and that's because I don't think it's good at all, personally.
Rings of Power.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I'm very disappointed. I'm extremely disappointed. I think a lot of it undercuts what J.R.R. Tolkien had, originally intended about his world. I think that there's a lot of politics and, the kind of movement stuff that has made and infiltrated that show, and I don't think that belongs so much in a fantasy world, personally. I think it should stay true to what was originally made, not because of any other reason other than the fact that, like, it's just what was written, right? So that's some of it, but also just the fact that, like, it's poorly written and it's boring and there's not really much to do, and a lot of it has nothing to do with what J.R.R. Tolkien wrote. Like, Galadriel, for example, is this warrior princess, and she was never that in the books. So it's like you're just taking a character and making it what you want because you want to, and I hate that. It's
How
like
many episodes have you seen?
5. Yeah, I think
So
there's like 10 total or something. Yeah. But overall, I've heard similar feelings across the board when it comes to people who are true Lord of the Rings fans. They're not happy about it.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Amazon, The Rings of Power was the most expensive TV show ever created. I think it was, I can look it up, but to get the rights of Lord of the Rings was like 750 million or some crazy.
And they didn't get all the rights to it. They only got the rights to a portion. That's why they can't really write what he actually wrote in the books that he wrote about this storyline, because they don't have all access rights. They only have rights to a portion. And it's like pretty much they're building this whole story off like an excerpt he put in one of his books that is not even the full story. It's just a little excerpt. So it's pretty crazy that all is happening. I think it's kind of like Amazon's move to try to compete with Game of Thrones, and I think they failed miserably.
Because that's what they're trying to.
And Game of Thrones is just holding it down. And like people who are Lord of the Rings fans are disappointed, and that's the people that you need to feed to. But I think that's a lot of the problems with studios lately now anyway, is that they're feeding in to people who aren't the fans. Like, I think the same thing happened with She-Hulk. The fans of Marvel, for example, are obsessed with the world, and they want things to be right, and they're upset when things are not taken seriously or when they're done improperly based off of what the source material is and based off what the universe has been given. And they go online and they're mad, and She-Hulk makes fun of fans the whole time. It's making fun of mad people who are pissed off about the way the movie should be. It's like you're making fun of your fan base in a show that is made for your fan base. How stupid is that?
So you think J.R.R. Tolkien would be dissatisfied with the Rings of Power show, but satisfied with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings?
I don't know about The Hobbit. A Hobbit is tough for me. I'm not even a huge fan of it. There's some of it I really like, some of it I don't. But the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I think, paid as much homage as you possibly could to the books. People who have read the books talk about how similar it is, how they're used some different things, but how well it was written and how well it was done. I think everybody that was involved in the project cared so much about the source and cared about making it accurate to what he envisioned as a writer, as opposed to these other shows that have come out in movies that it's more so how much money can we squeeze out of this, what can we add in that fans will like, for example, in The Hobbit, Legolas isn't even in The Hobbit. Like, he's not in it, but he's like gets more screen time than some of the dwarfs do that are actually in the Hobbit book, right? Because
they could have made a 2-part. They made it a 3-part. Like a 2-part would have been sufficient.
And there's so much wrong with that. The timeline on it was forced. I mean, we can go into details about that at some point when we do review it. But nonetheless, I think Lord of the Rings, what was done properly was they cared about the source material so much to make it so accurate and to really pay homage to what J.R.R. Tolkien envisioned for this world, as well as what he envisioned for the characters in this world. And that in and of itself makes it beautiful, right? It's just what we wanted the whole time.
Yeah, there's definitely a distinct difference even between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, especially from a film standpoint. I do like The Hobbit. I like Smaug. I think it's dope. But I've read the book. I like the book, and the book is shorter than the other 3 Lord of the Rings books, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So to have 3 films from The Hobbit is intense, and it's a long journey. So like I can see a 2-parter But
Right.
a trilogy is crazy.
Yeah, it was a money grab for sure.
Oh, hard body.
And that's sad for everybody who wasn't part of it because they didn't want that. From what I had heard and from what I had listened to, it sounded like they didn't want it to be that kind of a money grab. It was forced by the studio. And then there was a lot of passion pulled out of it for that reason.
Yeah,
and a lot of time crunching and et cetera.
Did you have second breakfast or 11sies today?
I didn't. I need it. Yeah, luncheon. We're gonna have supper. No, we're gonna have supper.
Swag. I loved 11sies when they said.
What about 11sies?
I was like, I've never heard of 11sies, but that's brunch. Basically, I fuck with brunch. Yeah. So back onto Fellowship of the Ring. I really like the pace of this film. We talk about money grabbing or cash grabbing with The Hobbit and how the pace of that was disturbed. The pace of this film and the way they weave characters in and out is so flawless, and it almost does feel like how a book would do it, you know? And it's makes for such a good watch, even though, like I said, it is slow to start, but it's so involved and they're really setting it up. And this is one of those films, even it being the first of a trilogy, I think it just one of those films that gets better and better as the film progresses.
Yeah.
And I love films. I feel like that's classic film on some degree, especially, I don't want to call it blockbuster, but just like really big films, like Potter's like that. Like some of my favorite films, it's not like, oh, I love the middle of the film. Like you love every part of the film because of the way it progresses and it paces and it just makes sense.
Right. And that's the thing. Like they're supposed to invest in characters at the beginning of the film so much that you're so invested in the characters. So then when the action and the big plot points come, you're invested in those moments. I think cinema nowadays does that too often. It's like they invest in the plot points and the big spectacle at the beginning, and they think that's what hooks you, but really you're just watching it mindless because you don't care about the characters.
Yeah. And we talk about caring about characters being invested in it. Back to Bilbo 1 second. You were talking about the addiction thing and how that ties in with the ring and Frodo. I thought the last thing I'll say about Bilbo is when he breaks down and apologizes to Frodo, because he kind of like gave his nephew a death sentence, like in his eyes. Like everybody's like, "There's no way Frodo's gonna make it," but like we're all, and that's what's so cool about the Fellowship is they're all like, "We're not gonna probably make this." We got a Hobbit carrying this, like, and Gandalf and Legolas and Aragorn all step up, which is super gangster, like so noble, gangster. You know. And but it just the Bilbo notion, he like breaks down. He's like, "I'm so sorry for everything. Like I fucked your life up. Like you're probably fucked. I lived my best life. I'm selfish, a piece of shit.
I left you with this burden." This is exact words.
So yeah, and
when he drops the ring out of his hand, Bilbo, you notice it doesn't bounce on the ground. They put a magnet underneath the ground to hold it, so to make it look really heavy. So that way, when when he drops it in front of his door when he's leaving, before he leaves the house, when Gandalf's like, "The ring's still in your pocket," and he drops it, they put a magnet under the floor to make it so it doesn't bounce when it hits the ground. It just goes boom, boom.
Oh, word.
It's super cool.
Yeah, and I heard they also use like enlarged versions of the ring to get certain shots because they get the texture and stuff. They one part that I think is dumb, like, where I talk about the improbableness that I liked in the beginning with Sauron, with his fingers getting cut. I don't like the improbableness of the ring falling on Frodo's finger. I think that is stupid. No ring has ever fallen. I don't care how heavy this ring is.
The ring did it.
But that ties into the mind of its own thing.
It wanted it because it needed to tell the Nazgul where it was, and they can see it once it goes on his finger.
I know that.
So that was a moment for the ring to take advantage of Frodo and use him in order to be able to be a target locator for those Nazgul, which is pretty sick.
Okay, I accept.
Yeah.
But you could see why, like, face value, I'm like...
Yeah. I think that exact concern is what most casual viewers have an issue with Lord of the Rings, is because they don't get that the ring has this power in it that it corrupts people, it controls people, it changes people, it works in its own way to get what it wants, and you have to constantly battle that day in and day out and day in and day out until you're just torn apart. And that's why you see Frodo kind of change a lot over these next 3 movies, because he's going in and day out battling the most powerful thing on the planet.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like that, I can't even imagine what that feels like. The ring is constantly trying to be found, and Frodo's constantly trying to not be found. The ring is constantly trying to show itself to Sauron, and he's constantly trying to hide it. The ring is constantly trying to get away from Frodo, and Frodo has to hold on to it. the ring is trying to constantly not be destroyed, and his one goal is to destroy it. Like, can you imagine dealing with that on a day-to-day basis for years? It'd be insane.
Bilbo?
No, Frodo.
Well, the journey is what, like 6 months?
Yeah, it's probably 6 months.
Oh,
I think years, but yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the Journey to Mordor was a 6-month trip, 2 months in Rivendell, which isn't depicted very well in the film, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
They're 2 months in Rivendell.
Right.
And the trip is roughly 1,350 miles, which is like kind of like walking from Maine to Florida, which is a far ass journey.
So far. Yeah. And you got to go up. They went halfway up a mountain, then down it. Yeah. It's crazy.
I like talk about believability. I think the first time I watched this film, I thought Gandalf actually died when he fell down with the Balrog. Like, you feel that he's gone.
100%.
Because especially after Boromir gets murked too, you're like, man, they lost 2 already.
Yeah.
You know, like, I know people knew going in that Gandalf wasn't dead. Yeah. But I thought they did a good job. Like, he died. Like,
he did. He's lost. And the actors being able to convey that so much in their acting, where they were like torn. Like, they were like, it's not normal for Gandalf to fall off something and just resurrect. That doesn't happen normally. And you could see that. They're just like, Gandalf's dead. Yeah.
And I love how, Legolas, he's like, I can't speak right now. I have so much grief. Like, elves don't really show emotion. Yeah. I'm guessing.
Yeah. They're just, I mean, they've seen it all, dude. They're immortal. So death and life isn't that important to them, to mortal creatures, you know? And
true.
They don't, it doesn't phase them that much, but Gandalf is different. Gandalf is a immortal creature as well. And like, seeing him go and knowing how much impact he's had on the world and how long Legolas has probably known him, it's like wild.
See, I would think that there would be a more significant grief for an immortal creature when something does die, because they're like, that doesn't happen.
Well, that's why you saw it. Like, if Legolas sees a human, Legolas sees a human die, like, he'd probably be like, okay, dude, what? Like, who cares? Like, I've seen millions of them die over my lifetime. Like, I don't care.
Wait, who is he talking to? They're at the woodland elf place, and he's like, yeah, I can't talk about it right now. I have too much grief. And it just is so, it sounded kind of nonchalant. I just kind of chuckled because I'm like,
swag.
He's just like, I can't talk about it right now. Like, just like OG about it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of this film? Actually, let me ask you this. Is Lord of the Rings your favorite film of all time? Or trilogy?
My favorite trilogy of all time.
Not trilogy, but like favorite films, I want to say. Like,
yeah, I don't, it would be up there for top 5 favorite films of all time. I haven't like thought about putting that in order, but no matter what, like, The Lord of the Rings is I would say my favorite trilogy of all time. Absolutely.
Well, not just trilogy, because there's like, how many trilogies are there? There's much less than any other.
Well, I mean, favorite film series of all time.
Is those films in your top 5? Like, all 3 of them?
The Return of the King is not.
Two Towers and Fellowship is in your top 5?
Correct.
Okay. Two Towers is above Fellowship?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just processing this.
Right.
Because I thought, what's in the top 5 among Lord of the Rings? If, say, 2 of the top 5 is Lord of the Rings, like, what else is up there?
Like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
That's definitely one of them. Maybe like Avengers: Infinity War.
Okay.
And then, maybe like Star Wars, the Empire Strikes Back. Those are like the legendary ones.
That's fair. Okay, so who is your least favorite character?
My least favorite character in like
Fellowship.
in the Fellowship, or in the whole movie?
Fellowship of the Ring.
Like
the film.
The film. Got it. Least favorite character in the Fellowship of the Ring would probably be. They have to have a certain amount of screen time here?
No, but they have to be. They can't be like a.
Yeah, it would probably be like Merry. Yeah, I'm just like, whatever. Like, he's cool, but I'm not into it. Pippin is more ridiculous an idiot, so I like it. But Merry's just too like blah.
Pippin is the most impactful character
in Lord of the
Rings. Check our video out on this YouTube channel, on the Hot Take Show playlist. We have an episode because we started a YouTube show called Hot Takes, and one of the hot takes we did was how Pippin is the most impactful character
in Lord of the Rings. Yep.
So check that video out. It's actually
It's
pretty
really
cool.
interesting. We do a lot of stuff. We break down a lot of different things about it and kind of go through each thing that Pippin did and how it had a bigger impact on the outcome of everything than any other character in the entire movie series.
It's actually probably my favorite episode it's one of the favorite episodes we've done. We did like 11 or 12, I think. But I really like that episode because it's like a timeless notion and
It's super far.
topic to discuss. But anyways, check that out, everybody. You'll fuck with it. If there was one thing you could change in this film, is there anything that you would change? Because if there was, what would that thing you would be? What would be that thing that you would change in this film?
I don't think there would be anything I'd change in this film.
Okay. If you had to change something.
If I had to change something.
Whether it's taking a character out
Yeah.
or changing a scene or whatever, like what would you change?
That's a good question. I think I would alter the segment when the ring wraiths are on Weathertop. I just am not convinced in that moment that they're as imposing of a force as they should be. They could literally have just like slaughtered the hobbits real quick and took the ring, you know, or like if even Aragorn coming, like there's one point where Aragorn like kills a couple or gets rid of a couple with fire, and then he turns around. There's one just kind of like walking around, and he like throws the thing at it, which is a dope moment. But it's just like I wanted to feel a little bit more like, oh shit, they're not fuckwithable, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas it's not really the feeling you got. And I don't know if it's just their overconfidence in that scenario. They were like, we're going to get this no matter what. There's like 3 little hobbits. We don't need to like go crazy on it. But just the way they moved was so slow, not really with like a lot of intention. I think that they definitely could have been more gangster in that moment.
Okay. I think that's a really good answer. Is that your least favorite part of the film? Or is there a least favorite part?
No, there's like more like, that's a fun part because it's like exciting. So it's not my least favorite.
So what's your least favorite part of the film? I know you love the film, but there's obviously like even...
Yeah, if I had to choose, like you said before, if I had to choose my least favorite part of the film, I would say the time spent in Lothlorien,
which is that?
Which is like Galadriel's kingdom.
Okay.
The time spent in Lothlorien is a little bit dragged out. Like I know there's some cool stuff in there. I just feel like it's like, and that's why I like the theatrical version a little bit better in that scenario. It kind of busts through that a little bit quicker. They get through it.
It's not to cut you off, but it's funny because that's also like I think the best part added in the extended cut,
right?
Is in that spot. But yeah, that whole.
But watchability wise, it's just like okay, I'm dragging here. There's a lot of cool stuff, but just like get me through it. I want to get to the next part. So that's I think the only part that I would say it's my least favorite. Yeah. There's good stuff in there. I wouldn't want to get rid of all of it. It's just more of like an alteration of it.
Yeah, because my part that I like is with the extended cut in what's the place called? Lothlorien is you could skim over a little bit that occurs and then just get to the gift giving because that's the segment that I like the most because of
super cool.
The impact that the gifts have throughout the story. I think if the whole extended cut, if they just had that sequence in there, because what is it like fucking 6-7 minutes tops?
Yep.
It should have been in the final cut, in my opinion.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and this might be a better question for me than it is for you, but
I'll let you know.
What I remember in the theatrical cut is that when the bow and arrow gets pulled out on Gimli, he goes, "These woods are perilous. We should turn back." Right?
I don't remember.
I don't think that happened in the extended cut. I think it goes right to the next scene, and I was like, did they take that out of the extended cut?
I don't know.
And that's wild to me. Like if you do an extended cut, you take something out from the theatrical cut. These woods are perilous. We should turn back. Like that's what he says. And it's like one of my favorite parts. So I saw it and I was like, did I miss it? I might have just missed it, but it's an interesting part.
I don't know the answer. You have to check tape.
Google.
What is your favorite part in this film?
Oh man, that's hard, dude. Fuck. I mean, if I have to break this question into a 2-part, okay? My favorite part, dialogue-wise, is, and like just movie scene, is the council meeting. Like that's when they get together and that whole
Form the Fellowship.
Yeah, form the fellowship. Like that's my favorite part of the movie when it comes to just like dialogue. But when it comes to action, right, which I think is a different part of it,
You can have two parts to this because
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes on in this film.
Yeah, my favorite action sequence has to be when they're in the mines and they get attacked by the orcs, and they're, Gimli's like, there's still one dwarf in Moria who draws breath, just that whole fight sequence and the way Legolas is just like outmaneuvering this huge fucking cave troll, and like the hobbits are just doing their part. Frodo survives a fucking spear stab with his fucking mithril, and fucking yeah, there's just so much fire shit in there, and then them running, and then all the goblins surround them, and then fucking Belrog comes out, and fucking the way Gandalf is like, this foe is beyond any of you. Run! And he took a while to say it. I'm like, dude, you should have said that faster, bro.
Well, then like he also says when he's hanging from the broken bridge, like, run, you fools.
Fly, you fools.
Oh, is that what he says? Fly? Sorry. I'm not the hardcore Lord of the Rings, which I love this film, but...
Yeah. But yeah, that whole Moria sequence, dude, it's undeniably just one of the coolest fucking things on the fucking planet.
That's definitely cool. Have you ever shed a tear because of the epicness of something you saw in this film, or any film for that matter?
Oh, I have in film plenty of times. This film probably when I was younger, I don't remember, but I mean, I've seen it so many times. I'm just like, I know everything that happens, every scene, where the camera's going to be angled, who's in it.
Sometimes like I've noticed now as I've gotten older, epicness will make me shed a tear, and I'll get choked up because I'm like,
did you this time?
No, there was nothing that like did that. I think the most epic moment for me that had me on my throat clench, if you will, was when Gandalf is like, I will go with you, and like Aragorn and Legolas, all like that gives me like goosebumps because that part is like super epic, and moments like that, like I've had like tears come down in films since I've gotten older because it's just so epic. You're like, oh fuck, like even if it's like super compassion filled, where you're like, man, it's so fucking epic that person is doing that. And I just was curious because that's happened with me in films more recently than like when I was younger with films. But
no, that part is so fucking mind blowing, and just the fact that all of these people who are leaders in their own right are willing to sacrifice months of their lives,
their life in general, to be honest.
Exactly, to go and help save the world, right? Like that is like as simple as it can be,
which is sick. That's why.
But it's just, and like elves hate fucking dwarves, and everybody hates men. Like they just think they're idiots, and just the fact they all came together, and men hates everyone else. It's just like, I don't know.
I fuck with it. It's super fire. Speaking of Mines of Moria, being that's one of your favorite action sequences, what was with the deal with Gandalf doesn't know the password and Frodo walks over and like gets it immediately?
It's because Gandalf thought like his. It's funny. His experience and knowledge got the best of him. Right?
He was overthinking
because he's overthinking it. It says speak friend and enter. So like he thinks, okay, if you want a friend, he's like, if you want a friend, then you speak the password and you enter. That's what he thought, right? And so he's going through all these different passwords and different, open sesames, as you will. Yeah. And Frodo just like sits there and thinks about it for a second. It's like, what's the Elvish word for friend? Like, and he says it and it opens, like, swag.
Yeah. I just was like, I didn't remember that part. Was it in the?
It's in the original.
It is okay. Yeah. It just was funny because I hold that Gandalf at high esteem. He's fucking a wizard. He's a goddamn wizard, And then like,
he's not very good at riddles though. Hobbits though are. Yeah, cool. I.e. how Bilbo got the ring from.
Yeah, I fucking love Gandalf and like the whole wizard shit, and they're always like, he's always getting high. He's like smoking and shit.
Yeah, and Saruman calls him out for it. He's like, you've been smoking too much of that. The hobbits, the halflings herb. Like you've lost your mind.
He shouts out Radagast too. Like you and Radagast be like smoking that shit. Radagast is the green wizard.
No, he's the brown.
Brown. Yeah. Where he's like in the wood. He's like with the green shit, whatever.
But no, he was saying that like, yeah, just the fact that he was like, you've been too accustomed to smoking the halflings herbs or whatever.
Got good trees, baby. Was the reason Sauron was coming back is because Saruman was assisting him?
No.
Or was it just like a long time coming?
Yeah, so Sauron had been working on building his strength for thousands of years. And that's what the Rings of Power talks about. Is like, that's the storyline, is kind of the re-emerging of Sauron. He was defeated and then he started building his strength. And then you see a little bit of that in The Hobbit. He starts building his strength. He's a necromancer in the East or whatever. And in this series, he's already built his strength enough to have a force behind him. Also, as you see, Mordor has been built up, and the volcano's going. They're forging stuff. And what happened is Saruman has one of the seeing stones, right?
Yeah.
Was it called a plant ear? He has been using it when he wasn't supposed to, knowing he wasn't supposed to, because he was trying to get extra insight in the world and create power on his own right, and then was corrupted. And Gandalf talks about using those is not right because they're not all accounted for and you don't know who else is watching, and therefore you can be corrupted by whoever else is on the other side. And so Sauron was corrupting Saruman through the plant ear, and because of that, Saruman got convinced that there was no chance they would win, that Sauron was going to win no matter what, and the only hope would be to join with him as opposed to oppose him. So that's kind of how that whole thing happened.
Okay, and one thing I wanted to ask too is Sauron's tower with the eyeball. Did the orcs and goblins build that for him? Is that how that manifested? And then the eye just appeared there.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably just like this evil power that just built up through Sauron and what he has. But yeah, he's think about it, dude. He's governing an army without even existing. It's fucking fire. Super fucking fire.
We were talking about the wizards and shit. The other ones, where are the other wizards at this point?
Yeah,
like
I don't know the lore enough to like be certain, but from what I think I've heard is that they're just kind of, they got lost and they were never found again. Like they pretty much just like went somewhere and you just never see them again. So they don't exist, or they don't exist. They're just
because there was a line that I was reading where Gandalf was trying to recall the wizards' names and he doesn't because they don't have the rights to it. But I think they're still.
Yeah, they weren't present in the books and they weren't a part of it. They were just they were lost in like a certain age or whatever. Like I don't know lore enough to go into too much detail.
I'd be curious to like see those illuminated and like expanded on.
Yeah, they're planning on doing it. Amazon's trying to do some shit to do that, but I just don't have faith that it's going to be good. So we'll see.
I thought that being trapped on a top of a tower was an interesting prison concept, where Gandalf is stuck at the top of the White Tower. The White Tower, right? Saruman's tower.
I don't know the name of it, but yeah,
he's on the top of the tower. Like
top of the tower.
That is such an interesting way to imprison someone.
Yeah,
you're just like what the fuck are you gonna do? Like,
right,
you're just up there.
Yeah, no, yeah. It was. I think the sequence of him being able to call on the eagle.
When he speaks to the
moth, and like he has that connection with the eagles because the eagles are like intelligent beings.
Yeah.
They're not. Some people have thought like they're just kind of like mindless. It's not the case.
No,
like they're super smart. Yeah. So they
save his ass in the Hobbit.
They fuck with him, and they don't really fuck with anybody else. And that's why they don't play a huge role in a lot of things in Middle Earth. They're kind of like, yo, we're not involved with this bullshit. Like, we fly, dude. Like, we don't need to be involved. We don't need to be on the ground, bro.
They show off for Gandalf, though.
Oh, yeah.
In Gandalf, the Hobbit and...
Yeah, they fuck with Gandalf heavy, bro. Gandalf's their dog, so...
Dude. Yeah.
Holla.
Why are the Nazgul afraid of water?
Fire and water, right? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I think it has something to do with the fact that they're dead. Like they're not alive nor dead. They're like,
so they're scared of elements.
They're just like this weird intermediary between death and life, and they're just it's hard to be burnt or swim. I don't know, but yeah.
Because and also, where does Arwen get the power to control the water to wash away the Nazgul?
Arwen, yeah, it's Arwen. It's her powers are from like elvish spells and her elvish ancestors.
So they can cast spells.
Yeah, they're like magical beings, not to the extent of
wizards.
Yeah, Gandalf, but that's part of the reason why Aragorn was like, this wound is beyond my skill T. Like, we need to go to get elvish medicine, because like, and it wasn't just any elf. It's like has to go to the top of the top. You know what I mean? And I think that they're, especially the more prestigious you are, or like not prestigious, but the more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you're a king or, a queen or a princess.
Like the elders of.
Yeah. Or, whatever. You have more power. You're more powerful than just like a normal elf. You have like these skills and these things that you've acquired because of your, prestige.
I really fuck with Arwen's love for Aragorn, where she would give up being immortal to be with Aragorn.
Right.
Like that's another epic moment that they don't really overdo the love shit with it, but to me, as like a grown man, like someone that would give up immortality to be with somebody is a really strong sentiment. It's
that shit is fire, dude.
It's super dope. Like, this bitch really loves him, and I love his response to it because I feel like if someone was immortal and was like, "I want to be with you, I love you," and I would be like, "You need to be with your people." It's like, I'm not worth. Like, I love you so much that you need to stay with your people because you're not losing that for my stupid ass.
Right. And I think that's the coolest thing about the Lord of the Rings is like it is the end of the time of the elves. Like the elves used to be one of the most powerful people in the entire Middle Earth, right? And this is the tail end of their existence. Like they're slowly, vastly, the majority of them are going off into their kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Their heaven, I guess, right? Is when they get on the boat and they go across the sea and they go into their heaven. And it's interesting that that's like a conscious decision that you make as an elf. You're like, hey, I'm like done with this world. Like I'm going to go on to the next. Like it's pretty fucking weird and kind of sad at the same time. So I see where Arwen stands in that sense, where it's like there's this kind of unknown that's standard to just go off into the east and be with my people. But at the same time, like I don't want to let go of this life I have, and I don't want to let go of the person I love for that. And so I think the decline of the elf and the rise of the man, right, is a huge pivotal role in this storyline. And I think that's where Tolkien is a genius in a way, because most people have these cool things that are like, oh, I have elves and I have, dwarves and I just want to use them and they're fun. But he's showing how like men have now taken the position of the strongest things in the world outside of elves and dwarves, right? And then there's this huge imposing force of the orcs and the evil that now men have to gather the strength enough to be able to defeat. And that's something that they've never had to do. They've always had the help of the elves, and the elves were always the ones who kind of carried them. You know, it's really interesting.
That's dope. Good insight. There was a funny thing that I read. I don't know if it's real or not.
Yeah.
But there was this Brazilian, they said grandmother, and I was like, who the fuck? This makes me think that this is like not a true fact.
Okay.
But when they're like overly concise and like Brazilian grandmother, like why is grandmother? Why isn't it just Brazilian woman?
Yeah, right.
Brazilian grandmother was mistakenly praying to the statue of Elrond, Lord of Rivendell, thinking it was Saint Anthony for like years and years, like the action figure. I was like, no fucking way,
hilarious, dude.
Like, you imagine walking to someone's house and she's like praying to Elrond.
That's fucking hilarious. That is so funny.
I don't know if it's real, but she allegedly for years was praying to Elrond.
Yeah,
Lord of Rivendell.
And that actually reminds me of one of the scenes in the extended cut where Aragorn is actually like going and kind of caring for, I think, Arwen's mom's grave. Like that's, I think, who it was. Or his mom, I think. I think it was his mom. Sorry, his mom. Because I think he was, because Elrond came out and said that your mom brought you here in order to keep you safe, yada, yada, yada. So it was his mom, which is cool. Like he's just going there and like talking to the statue, like, praying to the statue. Not really praying, but like just showing homage to the statue of his mom. Like this is super fire.
Yeah, I thought that extended cut, just like I said, it dove more into the characters and developed them and just more empathy towards them and just more invested.
Right.
One thing I fucking hate in films, and this film does it too, when things are like projectiles or rocks are thrown and it knocks individuals down, I fucking can't stand that because that's not what happens.
Dude, Merry and Pippin got it fucking. They're like
not Roger Clemens, okay?
Dude. They are. They're MLB stars,
no,
bro.
These motherfuckers, these orcai were wearing helmets
And they're like massive, imposing beings.
and Merry and Pippin are chucking rocks.
There's some pretty big rocks, dude.
And every time they connected, and
Is that the one thing you would change in this movie?
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, that would be the one thing I'd change. Like hitting an orcai in the head that's wearing a helmet would not make him drop to the ground. And they did like 4 times in a row.
Yeah,
like,
it was extensive for sure.
You don't need to do that.
They were trying to help.
I know, but they should can get hit and it could show that they're not helping or that it caused them to be distracted and draw attention towards them.
All right.
Come on.
I want to touch on Viggo Mortensen, right?
Aragorn.
he's an absolute fucking G. He did all of his own fucking stunts. The dude who trained him for like swordsmanship had trained like tons of people, and he said he was the best swordsman he's ever trained. Like,
That's
hands
appropriate.
fucking down.
It's appropriate.
And fucking he refused to use a rubber or an aluminum sword. Like, he only used an iron sword. Like, he was like, no, I'm not using like some fake shit. Like, give me the real deal. Like, when I'm out here. Like, absolute savage, dude. Like, he was so fucking perfect for this role. And
For sure.
Aragorn's character is so cool. Like, the lore behind like Isildur's heir, and the fact that like this dude is old, bro.
Yeah, how old is he?
He's like over 100 years old, like, and he looks like he does.
Is it because he was linked up with Arwen?
No, he's a part of this lineage that like is of these beings, these human beings that live for an extended period of time, longer than anybody else, and it's not normal. And there's only a couple of them left, and he's one of them. And I forgot the word for it, so I'm sorry for everybody, but yeah, he's old, dude. He's been around for a long time. That's why Legolas knows him so well and is like boys with him, because Legolas is like, dude, this human like lived longer than any other humans, like, and he's my dog, you know, like gangster, like. And Legolas is like, I've been around for 1,000 years, but this dude's lived for a couple hundred. Like, that doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, shit is hard as fuck, dude. Aragorn is such a cool fucking character. He was always like, even though he was never my favorite when it came to like Gimli and Legolas, it was always like, he's too right to be my favorite. Like, it's too easy. Like, obviously he could be my favorite. Like, no questions asked. So like, prestige. I'm like, I gotta pick someone who's a little bit different, because I can't be just like everyone else's favorites. Because dude, he's a fucking man, dude. He's the epitome of a fucking man. Absolute fucking man.
He's the king.
He's so gangster. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Do you have a lot of other shit to add about this? Do you feel like we covered?
Yeah, I have a few more things. Like, I kind of want to touch a little bit more on each individual character, right? Because we talked a little bit about Bilbo. Like, I think Frodo, for example. I think a lot of times people that don't particularly love this movie talk about how much time they spend with hobbits and how it's not very exciting. I think that's like some people's biggest gripe with the film, and I agree. I don't disagree in a sense where it is hard to invest yourself in the most boring parts of the characters. That's why I think The Two Towers is so fun, because it does spend a lot of time with Frodo and Sam and whatnot, but a lot of time spent also with just like Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn doing some gangster shit, right? Which is super fun.
The battles are super tight.
Yeah. So, but I think that Frodo is put in such a hard situation where most people, almost everybody on the planet, would have been like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah,
like, I'm not taking the ring. Like, no, like, find somebody else. This isn't my fucking responsibility. It's not my job. I'm not going to do it.
Shout out to Sam too.
Yeah, well, of course. Well, Sam, yeah, Sam is such a fucking G. Sam went and drowned himself just to prove that he's not going to let Frodo leave him. Like, what a fucking savage. But the relationship between Sam and Frodo is really fucking cool. And I think the fact that Frodo is willing to sacrifice his whole life for something that's not his fight and not his battle and not his job, and he gets nothing out of it. There's no big surprise at the end. There's no, oh, you get this if you do this. He doesn't get money. Like, it's not for that. It's just, I'm willing to sacrifice everything for a duty that's not mine. I could have just went and lived in Hobbiton and chilled with my people in the Shire and not ever tripped about none of this, and they would have figured it out, or maybe they wouldn't have, but I'd probably be not living long enough to see the result of that. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with when he gets the LotR and he sees the puddle or the, you know, little whatever, the fucking sink, and he kind of sees the images of the future, and he sees that the Shire will burn, and when he sees that, he's like, holy fuck, this needs to get done. But then right after that, he offers the ring to Galadriel, you know, and Galadriel goes like, I would be the fucking queen of it all. Like, I'd be the most fucking ruthless, most vicious I've ever been. No one can stop me. I'm Sonny Liston. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, she just went crazy. But then she was like, look, I just passed the test. I'm about to go in the east and just disappear. But Frodo was even at that point like, dude, this is too big for me. Like, I can't fucking do it. I need somebody else to take this responsibility on, because if this is the outcome, if I fail, like, how the fuck am I going to do this? And he still, after that, still decides to take on the burden. And that's just fucking like, it's honestly the most admirable thing anybody on the fucking existence of humankind could ever do, or hobbit kind or whatever, you know, just to like sacrifice everything you ever had and any opportunity you ever had to like just save the world with no pat on the back. It's fucking really swagged.
And he also dips out from the fellowship to be like, I need to do this solo.
Yeah, and that battle too, like between, you know, him deciding whether he needs to do this himself or he needs to stick with the people. Like, he knew that it would just end up tearing them all apart, and he knew that would be a detriment to the goal. And I think without Gandalf especially, I think Gandalf would be the strongest person to kind of hold them together. But it's funny, we even talked a little bit about like what could have happened had, in the episode on Hot Takes, we talked a little bit about what it could have happened if the Fellowship hadn't broken up, right? If they had stayed together, and how Gandalf probably would have ended up taking the ring at one point in time, right? At a point in time, he'd probably be like, dude, it's too dangerous. I need to take it. And it could have ended the whole world. So I think that pivotal moment of Frodo making that decision is like the only reason it even happened and was achieved, you know?
Yeah, because if it wasn't for Pippin like bumping into the shit in the Mines of Moria that caused that battle in the Balrog to grab Gandalf,
Right.
they wouldn't have split up. Essentially, they would have kept on moving. Which sometimes I almost think it would be really interesting to see like an alternate version of certain stories.
Oh, especially this one. There's so many different scenarios that could have played out, and like all of them would be really fucking cool. And I think this is one of those stories where if you did an alternate version where Sauron won, that would be an awesome like experience in and of itself. Like you'd be like, holy fuck, that's really cool. I think there's a lot of cool shit that could be done, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but it would be really sick if it did. But yeah, and Boromir is somebody else I wanted to talk about. Fucking Sean Bean, dude. Like, turn the fuck up, Ned Stark, dude. Ned. Yeah, he always dies, like you talked about.
Don't know spoilers.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, yeah, well, of course not. But the actor himself, he always just dies.
He's good at dying.
Yeah.
He's good at that.
That death of his was absolutely epic. And I think it really is cool, especially with the extended cuts. And especially when you look at what happens in Two Towers and whatnot, just seeing who Boromir really was to Gondor. Like, he's like the number one general. Like, he's the son of the steward, you know, like he's the stewards of Gondor's favorite son. Like, he's won so many battles, and he's like this absolute gangster. And like you kind of think he's a punk the whole time, because you're like, dude, he's such a little bitch. He can't win against the ring's power. But like, you got to think about, he has the most motivation to want that ring, because he feels so responsible for the health and wellness and the survival of his people, that he feels that ring is a solution to the problem. And Gondor has been on the forefront of the battle with Mordor forever, the history of Middle Earth, because they're right across a fucking field. You know what I mean? They're the closest city to fucking Mordor. So he feels more responsible than anybody else to take care of this fucking problem. You know what I mean? And he's so swayed by the ring's power because he needs it so much. He wants it so much. And he feels like if he gets it, he's going to solve all the problems that could, you know, pop up. So I think that battle of his own will is really important. And I think that the way they handled it with Frodo putting on the ring and kind of dipping and dodging was really fucking cool. And it's actually funny. Sean Bean's really scared of fucking flying, like extremely scared of flying. And they did a lot of scenes where they had to take a helicopter to the location. Like, for example, up on top of the mountaintop where the snow and shit, right? Like, they had a helicopter lift up there in order to do that shot, right? He walked it every day. He fucking put on Boromir's outfit and fucking climbed the mountain to get to the shots because he didn't want to take a fucking helicopter. Like, what a savage, dude. Like, what a fucking G.
I hate flying too. Like, look what happened to Kobe, R.I.P.
Yeah, facts.
Like, that shit happened. So it's like, fuck that.
He was like, I'm just gonna trench up this fucking mountain. Like,
it had to have been miles.
Miles, absolutely.
It probably was like 8-10 miles or not that long. But
yeah, it was probably like 4 or 5 miles. Like, seriously, that he was climbing every day to just like get to the shoot. Like,
that's intense.
What a G, dude. Yeah, I think that's another thing I want to talk about, is just like, we don't get enough of two things in modern day cinema. One, shooting on site. We don't get enough of it, especially now with the fucking, what is it called? The thing where you can shoot in the room with the fucking screen around you. There's a name for it. I forgot what it's called. Sure. They shot Lion King on. Oh, not Lion King. Sorry, they shot a lot of the new Game of Thrones on it. They shot a lot of Star Wars on it. I mean, the new Star Wars and especially The Mandalorian.
It's like a whole green screen room.
It's not a green screen. It's a fucking room full of LED screens, all that cover the whole wall. So you're shooting in what looks like in a studio, but around you, so what's actually happening on camera and what's going to happen in post is happening around you as an actor. Oh, cool. So you see it happening in front of you, which I think is a cool concept. But I think when you watch it, it feels like you're in a room, right? Even green screens, I think, give you the ability to kind of make things look more vast than this. And I think it's a fucking huge problem for cinema, and I want it gone, and they think it's the coolest thing ever because the actors are all like, well, it's cool because I can actually see what I'm acting in front of and da-da-da-da. But it's like, dude, like what it's doing to modern day cinema is fucking detrimental as fuck. And I hate it. And then also green screen, obviously, like everything is shot on fucking green screen now. CGI is everything. So it's like the two things that this movie does that honestly makes it timeless as fuck and also makes it such good cinema that needs to be the new modern day trend is makeup instead of CGI. Doing actual prosthetics and makeup and making characters actually look the way they look and making them real.
Practical effects.
Practical fucking effects, dude. It's so fucking valuable. And just seeing those goblins all around them after they crawl off the fucking walls and shit and seeing them surrounding them, like it's legitimately scary. Like you're actually like, holy fuck, those things are terrifying. As opposed to like, if it's just a bunch of CGI things, you don't feel that. You're like, oh, it's supposed to be scary, as opposed to it is scary. So that's number one. And then second of all, shooting on site, like doing it outside of a fucking studio and making it look like you're actually in these places by actually being there. It's harder. Studios hate it because it costs more money and they feel like it's a waste of time a lot of times. And they feel like they can't get the shots right because of this lighting. It's like, suck it the fuck up and do it the right way. You know what I mean? Like that's two things that this movie is just undeniably the best at out of any other movie series on the planet. And I respect it so much because there's so much time and effort put into it, you know?
Yeah. Those are very insightful, honest, I think accurate things to say. Facts. I appreciate it.
Facts. No doubt, dude.
No doubt. You keep. I know how much this film means to you. So, like, if you have anything else to add, by all means, I'm sure people are loving it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I, will go into when the Two Towers come. But
yeah, like try to keep it as much.
Yeah, this is the Fellowship, right? And I think that encompassed pretty much everything. I think the Orkai and the creation of the Orkai is really fucking cool.
It's gross, too.
It's so disgusting and it's so awesome. Gross. But just like how they pop out like fully grown and loyal to fucking Saruman, like so swagged out. Saruman's kind of like villain origin story here, unparalleled. He just turns bad and like tears down all the trees and like, you know what I mean? Like fucking Isengard is just such a cool fucking place. I think
Rivendell is dope.
Rivendell's fire. The way they did Rivendell is really dope. I think they use a lot of models for the wide shots, which is cool.
It looks CGI-esque, but I liked it because they made it and they had different distances for the wide shots of Rivendell, and it just is like such like a immersive, but also just like a beautiful. It looked really such beautiful. Like a peaceful, great place that I would want to spend 2 months at.
Yeah. No, the immersiveness I think of this movie, and I brush on a little bit at the beginning, but just like every single scene, every single character, every single shot, they all make you feel like you're really in fucking Middle Earth with real fucking elves and wizards and fucking dwarfs and hobbits. It's fucking insane, dude. Yeah. And the way they did it. You could just see that they had so much time and they cared so much. And that to me is worth every second of it. Right. But yeah.
Shout out to Tolkien and shout out to Peter Jackson, everybody a part of this.
Facts.
Fucking stellar job.
Yeah,
Everybody, I don't care who you are. Everybody likes this film to a great degree. No one's like, that movie is stupid. Like that should not be spoken.
Phenomenal, dude. There's so much good parts of it, and you know it's hard. And I already touched on this a little bit, but one more time, just with this movie, watching it now compared to what we've seen for the last 20 years, and all of these big, huge scale movies, I don't think any of them would be what they are without Lord of the Rings. And going back and seeing it and seeing the scale they were able to accomplish and how big they were able to make everything and how immersive, it's just it was way ahead of its time for sure.
I agree. I mean, I thought this was a great start of a trilogy and a good ending to the start of a journey. Definitely has you anticipating a sequel.
Hell yeah.
And I definitely am excited to do the next review on Two Towers. Maybe this winter we'll get to it.
That'd be sick.
Do you want to hit people with a rating?
Yeah, 9.9.
9.9. Wow. Big dick energy. I respect it. The reception of this, for anyone that cares, IMDb gave it an 8.8. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 91%. Metacritic gave it 92%.
Love that.
I'm going to hit with 8.7.
Nice.
I really like this film. It's a dope film. Two Towers, I think, is better. It doesn't take anything away from this, just, you know. And Return of the King is not close to the awesomeness of the first two, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think the Return of the King would be just as good if it wasn't for the ghosts. The ghost is what did it for me.
We'll get to that. We'll save it. But thank you for coming on this show for this episode. I know it's been years we've talked about it. I wanted to make it. I think I was wise in waiting for the time to do this episode.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the peoples will fucks with this. Appreciate everybody watching this episode. I hope it's what you were looking for. I think we did justice to this. And we can button this up if you good to go.
Hell yeah, bro. Yeah. For sure.
Do some pluggies.
Yeah, you already know what the fuck going on. This is John Smith. I'm out here talking about Lord of the Rings on some serious nerd shit. Because you know what the fuck?
Here.
I'm the nerd's favorite rapper. I'm a nerd rapper and I dig it.
And a healthy rapper.
And a healthy rapper. But yeah, I just dropped a tape called Muddy with my boy Pseudo Black. Shit slaps. So make sure you go tap in on that. John Smith, Pseudo Black, Muddy. You can tap in with me on Instagram at MG_John X Smith, or you can just go to johnsmith.com, johnxsmith.com. You can type in John X Smith on Google to get at me however you want, but obviously everything's in the description. And yeah, I got a tape coming out on the way, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I don't have a name yet, but I got songs on songs, so just stay tuned.
And you got a show November 23rd at El Cid in LA.
Yeah, and if this is gonna be out by then, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
November 23rd. If you want to get at me, you can get at me on the DMs on Instagram or wherever, and just let me know that you heard it on the Movie Rant break, and I'll give you a free ticket and a free drink. You already know what the fuck it is.
Hey, appreciate you.
For sure.
That's gonna do it for us here over at the Movie Rant break. Appreciate everybody for listening to this episode. John Smith hitting it with a 9.9. Your host hitting it with an 8.7. Appreciate everybody. If you want to say what's up, hit me up at the Movie Rant break. And that's going to do it. Appreciate everybody checking next episode. Deuces.
Peace.